Trump is getting absolutely eviscerated in this super viral clip that's being shared by the likes of Kamala HQ and smooth brain leftists like Mark Cuban. So instead of dissecting a typical leftist soggy brain, this time I'm going to explain what Trump actually is saying. Because relatively smart people are pretending like they don't understand it, and the rest of the people just don't understand it. Here we go.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable?
Okay, first let's think about how flawed that question is. Will you commit to prioritizing legislation that will make childcare affordable? First of all, affordable is a subjective term. There's 50 different states. What's affordable to Jim may not be affordable to Sally. Now, legislation to make childcare affordable. It's not the federal government's job to make childcare affordable. That's like saying legislation to make sneakers affordable or prioritize legislation that'll make sure kids have more fun. And next she said prioritize, which would mean that it would be higher priority than a lot of other legislation, if there even should be legislation for such a thing, which there shouldn't. So the entire question is flawed and a trick and a trap all on its face.
And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
There is no specific piece of legislation that he could or should advance. Childcare is a very small piece in a very grand machine. If the government can figure out how to get out of the way for the big picture, childcare will solve itself on its own. Imagine that the government was a complex machine like a cell phone. Affordable childcare would be like a slow-running program on that phone when there's also a cracked screen and the phone is on fire.
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. You know, I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue.
When he says, I would do that, what he means is that he will work to reduce the cost of childcare. And then he names his daughter Ivanka and Marco Rubio as two people that have been working to champion that ideal.
But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it.
What he's saying is that childcare is a necessary family expense like diapers. It's important and you have to have it, but it's not something that you prioritize like that with legislation. You can fix the big picture stuff and it'll solve itself on its own.
But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about,
what he's saying is that childcare is a relatively small line item on a big sheet of expenses. Like if you have a big car to fix with lots of expensive parts, but you're talking about how to save money on windshield wiper fluid.
By taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care of.
What he's saying here is that by using tariffs and other financial instruments and negotiations with foreign powers that produce lots of our products, they will be able to negotiate better terms and better rates that will reduce the cost of everything, freeing up more available cash for childcare and reducing the cost as well. The absolute simplest and most basic way to do this is to reduce the cost of energy by drilling here domestically and sending it overseas, selling it.
We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time.
He's talking about deficits in certain sectors of the economy and in the bureaucracy. He's also talking about reducing the trade deficit. Reducing deficits and debts would save us a lot of money that we waste on interest. Interest that we borrow and print out of thin air, creating more inflation.
Coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country.
He's saying that reducing costs of wasteful government programs, wasteful departments, and overspending on contracts, as well as reducing fraud, that we could save a lot of money that could be repurposed for other things. Childcare being one of them, and reduced inflation being a byproduct.
Because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about.
You see, it's a small piece of a big machine. Yes, we want to save money on windshield wiper fluid, but what we'd be much better off is making sure that the car runs better and we save money on engine parts. This is how a businessman prioritizes a balance sheet. Because you see, a leftist like Kamala would have just lied. She would have said, yes, childcare is very important and we're going to advance legislation. She would have said a bunch of meaningless gobbledygook that would have amounted to nothing. But he has to try to explain a very complicated issue in simple terms in less than a few minutes, without slipping up and saying one glaring statement that will destroy the entire answer for people that don't understand or want to pay attention. Because that's how politics works. It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars And as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people, but we're going to take care of our country first.
Again, what he's saying is that such sweeping changes would bring tremendous prosperity, of which childcare would pale in comparison to all of the other savings and benefits that come as a result. He's saying that in addition to a lot of the domestic waste, a lot of it happens overseas, and we need to take care of ourselves and our people. That simple act alone would trickle down to a variety of different programs being less expensive and easier to obtain for American citizens, childcare being one of many.
This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you.
They are pretending that this answer made no sense because they are A, too low IQ to understand, or B, intentionally misleading their audience to believe that there was no substance there. If he had lied and appealed to the lowest information voter like a leftist would have done, it'd been like, we're going to pass legislation to make childcare more affordable and diapers more affordable. They would have been more satisfied with that answer. Then they would have accused him of being a commie like they are. The slightly smart ones that actually do get this appeal to the lowest common denominator and pretend like they don't. Because the lower IQ and lower information that the voter has, the easier it is to say, Tim has a corn dog and a pork chop, and Krusty likes pretzels. That clip they've been sharing has tens of millions of views already, and I just shredded it apart in 6 minutes flat. Point for the truth.